everybody. I'm Joshilyn Jackson, and this is Wanda Morris. And we are here at Charis bookstore, one of my favorite independent bookstores. In fact, before they moved over to Agnes Scott, I used to live right up the street from you guys. I used to walk down and buy Stoner McTavish novels. And we are celebrating the launch of Anywhere You Run, which is Wanda's second novel after her after the critically acclaimed All Her Little Secrets, which I also loved. Wanda, congratulations.
Thank you so much. And thank you for doing this.
Oh, it's my great pleasure. I am going to just tell you guys, I did not get this novel until last night. Last night about 7:30, my husband came and picked up my copy here, and I sat down to read it. And at a certain point, it was almost miserable to have to try to sleep. I woke up this morning. My husband, he's very sweet. He always brings me coffee. He brought me coffee, and I was like, honey, bring me that book. And I stayed in bed and finished it. So it is just that freaking good. It is unputdownable. Wanda, why don't we start off with a softball pitch? Obviously, nobody's read this yet because it just came out today. A few of us.
Oh, a few people have. Oh, thank you.
But most people haven't had a chance to read it yet, and we're going to be real careful about spoilers, so nobody worry about that. But for people who, tell us a little bit about the book. Give us the premise, wet our whistles.
Sure. So, Anywhere You Run is the story of two sisters. I like to describe it as a coming of age story with lots of dead bodies. Sisters Violet and Marigold find themselves in a bit of trouble. Violet is brutally attacked, and she kills her attacker. But it's 1964 Mississippi, and the Deep South, Jim Crow. She knows that she won't get justice, so she decides to run. And she winds up in a small rural town in Georgia through a series of twists and turns. Her sister Marigold also in trouble, but she's pregnant and unmarried, and that was a big no-no in the 1960s. When the police show up at her door looking for Violet, she takes off running as well. And she heads to the north thinking that life would be better in the north without the segregation laws. Much to both the women's surprise, things do not turn out well. They never do in my books. And both women wind up trying to figure out their lives, but what they don't realize is that there is a dangerous man from back home in Jackson, and he has some dark secrets of his own, and he is hot on the trail to find these women with a very unique motive for doing so.
Yeah, very unique motive for doing so. That is even a spoiler.
Yeah,
right. Well, no spoilers, but it's not because it's the first 3 pages. This book opens with a multiple murder, with a lynching, where 2 white people who have come down from the north to try and help the vote begin to happen, and 1 young black man who has been working with them are brutally murdered. And I wondered, was this based on we're in Mississippi, and I know my Mississippi history.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, it is the book opens with the murder of, as you said, the civil rights workers who were there as part of freedom riders, Cheney, Goodman, and Schwerner. And the murder actually was my way. The book starts off in a very brutal way. But I did that intentionally to demonstrate the brutality and the horror of the time period, so that you were immediately immersed in 1964 Jim Crow, Mississippi.
And this is, to be fair, this is a thriller. This is a murder mystery. It's not going to open with people making tea and talking about war. This is a great opener that grabs you by the throat, and you are instantly so interested to find out what would happen. I wondered if it was based on a real case, and I wanted to ask you about, one of the best things about this book that I loved was how you brought this time period to life, and it felt very real to me, and all these like things that it's very easy for me to take for granted, being white and living, where I live in Decatur, and being a woman of my time period. Like there were just all these layers of things that were so surprising and stuff. Like, what kind of research did you do into the Jim Crow South to make this be so real?
Yeah, so I always give a shout out to the Auburn Avenue Research Library on African American history and culture, located right here on Sweet Auburn Avenue in Atlanta. They just had a treasure trove of information, and I walked into the library once I decided what I was going to write about, and I told the librarian I need all this research about voting rights in 1964, 1965, and he's like, I got you. And they opened up all sorts of information, papers and books, and it was painful sometimes to read the research, looking at some of the pictures, reading firsthand accounts of people who were fighting for just a simple right to eat at a lunch counter or sit anywhere they wanted on a bus. Some of the things you read in the book, like, for example, when people went to try and register to vote, for example, they were given intelligence tests. Black people were given what they call intelligence tests. And it was something like reciting the Mississippi State Constitution or writing it out by hand. And if you didn't cross a T or dot an I, then you were denied the application for the right to vote. Or something as ridiculous as counting the number of jelly beans in a jar before you could get an application to vote. And it was a treacherous time, not only because your life was in danger, but your very right to select who governs you and who makes decisions about your life was at stake. So yeah, that research was really, really tough. But there was also fun research. I mean, I did a lot of research about the music of the time period, fashion. I tried to recreate 1960s fashion with my poodle-like skirt. But I wanted to make sure that the reader was immersed in 1964. And not only the history, but how did people talk in 1964? What were they wearing? And what were they thinking about? And what were their parties like? And I tried to bring that into the book.
Yes, I think you did a great job of that. But I think the thing that really makes it work is in this book where we have this sort of moment in history really captured and brought to life, it's done in a really personal way through the filter of a single family, a family that I fell in love with these two sisters. I love their flower names. There's a third sister named Rose.
Yeah.
Later, there's another character we meet who's named Lily, who ends up becoming like a sister to one of them. That's my favorite character in the book, by the way. Wait for Lily, she's the best. And she has the sight, she thinks a little bit. And so
yeah, she has a special eye.
She's got that eye and the special eye. I loved her. And so I want you to just tell us a little bit about this family, because there's really sort of three mysteries going on. There's the mystery of what happened to these civil rights workers and will there ever be justice for that? And then there is the mystery of Violet has made a decision to not take a certain thing. You said it. You told them already, so I can talk about it. And it's in the first chapter, which I love. She is assaulted, and she very coolly is like, "Well, he's got to die. Now what?" Which I love. Like there's not a lot of hand wringing over it. It's just this is what has to happen now. Love Violet. And so there's the mystery of how, like, is she going to get away with that? And it's, she's a Black woman who has killed a white man in 1964 Mississippi. And then there's a third very personal mystery of what happened to the oldest sister, Rose.
Yeah. So each of the sisters has, they're named after a flower. There's Rose, who's the oldest, Marigold, the middle sister, and Violet, the youngest sister. And they were referred to as Mama's Bouquet. And the reason why I did that is because there was so much horror going on in the segregated South. And so their mom says whenever she gave birth to them, she was bringing something beautiful into the world until she named them after flowers. The sisters are very close. They're very loving. But like most sisters, they kind of keep some secrets to themselves and some struggles. Even though they're close, they have their personal struggles that they keep to themselves. But what I try to do, and especially with this book, I wanted to make sure that I populated the book with different examples of women. Lily, who you refer to, Lily Mae Dukes, she's also one of my favorite characters too. And Lily Mae is a queer character, she's gay. And her father is a pastor in the church. And I put her in the book to demonstrate how the church had a problem, and still does, with gay and lesbian people. There's, of course, the sisters and who they are. There's Miss Willa, who runs a boarding house. And she's kind of the matriarch of the community, as we've all grown up in communities like that, where it was that special someone who took care of everybody and made sure that people had something to eat and people got back on their feet. There's also, there's so many characters. I don't want to describe each one because then I'll have to get into the story and I don't want to give any spoilers. Yeah, I better stop there.
Yeah. Well, we're going to talk about one more character. We just have to, and we'll talk a little bit vague. But one of the things that really impressed me was there's several villains in this book. There's some big bads in the book, but there's also there are some villains that are very, very human. And I thought something that you did that was just so nuanced and amazing was there's a portrayal of a white woman here who holds some really abhorrent views and who is, I would say, an awful human being. He is an awful human being, but viewed in another light, he really loves his wife. He really loves his kid. He's probably a great upstanding member of his church. And you have sunk him into this where he really is a product of his time, and he dehumanizes anybody who's not like him in these horrible ways. But you do this while still making him a whole, well-rounded person that you can, you're not just like, oh, well, it's Darth Vader. This is a human being. And I think that must have been really hard to do. Like, was that a decision, or is that just because you're a great writer, or talk about that a little bit?
Very much. No, it was intentional. That particular character is in the book to demonstrate that racism affects us all, Black and white. And that, of course, there are shades in people, all people aren't good, all people aren't bad. But as you indicated, this man is a product of his time. And while some might view him as someone who is a good and decent person, he is still caught up. And he's used as a pawn in this whole racist caste system. In the book, which was also part of the research, there was an actual organization called the Mississippi Citizens Council. And these were the white business leaders in Mississippi. They ran businesses. They were leaders in echelons of government and business organizations. But they also were the the sophisticated face of the Klan, essentially. And these men stoked violence, and they were bound and determined not to see integration come into the state of Mississippi. And both Marigold, Violet, and this particular character that you're referencing were all caught up in this caste system that the Mississippi Citizens Council had devised.
I just thought it was fascinating. I only have a couple more questions, and then I'm going to be looking to you guys to see what you want to talk with Wanda about. I love that we have this nice crowd here, and I want to not just talk about what I want to talk about, but we want to talk about what you want to talk about too. So get those questions locked and loaded. I have a couple more.
Okay.
And I'm probably gonna say it wrong, so you're gonna have to help me out here. Chillicothe. That's a very familiar word. I remember it from All Her Little Secrets. Once again, we have returned to a very specific place in time, a very specific place, but in a much earlier time. What is it with you and say it for me. Chillicothe.
So first of all, Chillicothe, Georgia is a fictional town. There is no, and I've had people say, I went to the map and I went to Wikipedia. Chillicothe, Georgia. There is no Chillicothe, Georgia. But the name Chillicothe is kind of a nod to Ohio, where I am from originally. But, you know, I was telling someone else this, there is something about a small town that is like catnip to me. Like, you know, I just cannot stay away from small towns in my book. And I think it's because, you know, small towns have this, you know, friendly banter on the surface. Everyone knows everyone and everybody takes care of everybody. And then just beneath the surface, there's this layer of, you know, lies and deceptions, secrets people have been keeping, things that we don't talk about, people that we don't really talk about. And I think that is just rich fodder for creating mysteries and thrillers. And so, yeah, I think I'll always be writing about small town. My next book has a small town in it. Wow, yeah, I love small towns.
It's not the same one?
No, it's not.
Well, I wonder if it'll keep coming bigger. And I want to say, like, when did All Her Little Secrets come out?
November 2nd, 2021.
Right. So I read it in like September because I knew we were doing the event. And then I liked it so much I read it again, I think in December or January. And when I came to Chillicothe, I remembered it. So that is a stick with you. I was like, wait, I know this thing that's from that other book, but I know what happened there. So these are books that have really stayed with me, apparently. They were good.
Yay.
So that said, All Her Little Secrets is a contemporary thriller with a protagonist who is a lawyer. I have a couple of questions about that one. My first one is, like, in that novel, I always like to ask authors this is very interesting to me. One of the things I asked you was, where do you locate yourself in that book? Like, and you talked about being a lawyer and all that kind of stuff. Where do you locate yourself in this book? Like, where are you hiding? Why?
You know what? I think there's a little bit of me in each of the sisters. I'm like Violet, so I'm the youngest of the family. But I like Violet too because, I like to have a good time. I obviously like a party. We were drinking champagne out on the porch earlier. And so, I like a good time. I think I'm like Marigold because I think I was that kid that always had her nose stuck in a book. I love to read and I love school. And I think I intentionally put this in about Rose. She wanted to be a writer, but her parents had other, plans for her. And, when I was growing up, I loved to read, I loved to write. I didn't really think of myself as being a writer, but I think I shared that with Rose, the older sister as well.
Well, another parallel I noticed with All Her Little Secrets, like here we are, you're writing them decades apart, and yet thematically you're hitting some of the same notes, and I see parallels between what's happening in this book in 1964 and what's happening in All Her Little Secrets in 2020. 2021.
Yeah, 2021.
So talk about that one once.
You know, I started this book shortly after I finished All Her Little Secrets. I turned the book in to my editor and I was looking for another project to write about. And we had just come through, this country had just come through the 2020 election. And there was all this noise and rancor about election fraud and stolen elections. And, I remember seeing the long, long lines for people waiting to vote. And I thought, ooh, it would be really cool to write about that. But I couldn't really figure out a contemporary angle because, as you know, I must have lots of dead bodies in my books. So I couldn't really figure out a way to do that. But then it got me to thinking, how is it that the law that allows Blacks to vote was passed nearly 60 years ago, and here we are still facing the same issues. So I decided, and that's when I went into the library, and I decided to look backwards, to look forward. And the book was originally going to be set in 1965. 1965 is the year that the Voting Rights Act was passed. But as I started to research, I realized that there was work that was done long before that in order to get to 1965. And so I backed up a year. And interestingly enough, the Civil Rights Act of 1964, I hope I'm not getting too legalese, but the Civil Rights Act of 1964 was passed. And that's the law that really kind of set up the practice of law that I always did. I did labor and employment law and civil rights law, which all emanated from the Civil Rights Act of 1964. So it's kind of a nice little full circle moment to bring kind of both my careers together. But, it's so interesting that the parallels are so horrifically sharp, that
Vivid.
And even though this book was finished before the Roe v. Wade decision was overturned this past summer, I never imagined that my daughter, who is in her 20s, now has less rights than I had when I was in my 20s. She doesn't have the right to govern her own body under this political climate and this Supreme Court. We're still dealing with some of the other same issues we were dealing with in 1964, police brutality, issues with the queer community. Gosh, I could go on and on. Women still being portrayed as second-class citizens. And
second-class wages.
Making second-class wages, exactly. So, to me, I was writing a fictional novel, but as I was writing the book, I kept thinking to myself, this is shameful. I feel like we are just a stepping stone away from reversing all the rights that we fought so hard to get, that we could very well be back in, a Jackson, Mississippi, or Chillicothe, Georgia, if we keep going in the direction we're going in.
That is more chilling than the murders in this book. I just want to say real quick a thank you to everybody who has come to join us virtually. We are here at Charis Books and More, which is a flagship indie that has been in Atlanta since forever. I'm also going to tell you that this book is a keep shelf book. And I want you to buy it, and I don't want you to buy it from just anywhere. I want you to buy it from here. Because if you don't buy it from here, we will eventually lose this bookstore. And this bookstore is a place that gives a platform for authors like me and Wanda to talk about the things that we're writing about and for us to come together with readers. And it's a hub for the community and for civil rights activism. If you know this bookstore, you know that's true. So, you want this book, you probably, you probably have on the little sleepers, but if you don't, they will sell you that one too. So click the button and go ahead and get it from Charis. I also want to say, October is a breath away from dying. Christmas is coming. This is a wonderful present. You need to get 2 or 3. They are small. So I think we have just about yapped enough, you and me. Let's open this up a little bit. Does anybody out here have a question for Wanda?
I have a question.
Let me give you a mic
Oh, sure.
so people online can hear you.
Okay, great. Hi. Is that too loud?
No, it's not. You're good.
Great. So thank you. This has been amazing. Great conversation. I'm so excited. A billion questions. But the first one is because of what you brought out about the themes and the commonality of the themes. And I haven't read the book yet, but just hearing about the themes. So I lead my diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging group at my job, and we just finished All My Little. I proposed All My Little Secrets for our book club discussion. But part of the reason I proposed it is because I thought it brings out its diversity, equity, inclusion themes in the workplace environment for an in-house lawyer, and I'm an in-house lawyer, and it's perfect for that. But this was the same thing. So to me, I feel like you are bringing up the issues that diversity, equity, and inclusion people need to discuss in a way that is not so in your face. And the thing that made me think of that is what you said about the character she developed, the white man that's a whole and complete person, fully respected in his community, but someone that you want to hate, like you're supposed to hate him, but he's a fully respected person. That's exactly how you discuss the EI issues. And I'm wondering if you're doing that on purpose. Is that, are you trying to help us discuss something that you work on in your whole career as a lawyer? Are you doing that on purpose? Are you like trying to help us fix America?
Yeah, right. In my own little way. No, I am intentional about those issues. I really do just write about the books, about issues in my books that are issues that are important to me. They're issues that touch me. They're issues that, make me mad, make me sad. And, when I write about them, I sometimes feel like it's cathartic for me, that this is my way of kind of addressing it, one Black woman, one Black woman's opinion. But what I found after writing the first book is that those issues that make me mad and sad make a lot of people mad and sad. And angry and want to do something, and I like that. I find that we can't all, be out there on the front lines, but maybe this is my way of saying, can we not take another look at what this country is doing to each of us? The caste system that you alluded to, that goes on right now in 2022. And, I don't want to stand on a political soapbox, but there's so many people who work to their own disadvantage because they are so engaged with the racist, polarizing rhetoric that they hear, that the leadership and the things that they follow disadvantage them. But they will do it because that is the bill of goods that they're being sold. And likewise, in my books, I try to address that, to kind of hold up a light and say, we can be better than this. We can do better than this.
I think the reading fiction is what teaches people empathy. I really believe that. I think that when you read other people's stories, you can inhabit that life for a minute. And this is the kind of book, like, I like a book that has some kissing and some shooting. I'm not ashamed of that. It has some kissing and some shooting. But it's also a great book club book. Like, there's so much in here that you could talk about. Who else has a question?
And there is some shooting and kissing.
Oh, yeah. I want a book with kissing and shooting. But after there's the kissing and the shooting, I want a book that I can sit down with it, like a glass of wine, maybe two, don't judge me, and talk about it for a while. And there's plenty in here for that.
Okay, Joshilyn. Hi, everybody. I'm so excited to be here. I know that the first book, All Her Little Secrets, was somewhat of a labor of love for you. It took you a number of years to write. You were working, different things were going on in your life. I'm curious about the contrast in writing anywhere you run, because you said you started it right after you completed All the Little Secrets. So I just like you to sort of get us into your head, like how was that writing experience as compared to writing experience with them All the Little Secrets?
So getting into my head is a dangerous place to go. I'll take you there nonetheless. So yeah, All Her Little Secrets took me years to write. And I think much of that was because I didn't know how to write a book. I mean, when I was writing that book, I was just stringing together sentences and scenes that I was like, oh yeah, that looks good. And as soon as I sent it out to agents, they were like, oh no, this is a dumpster fire. And that's okay, because what it did is it forced me to go and learn the craft of writing. And so that's when I started taking courses and learning about characterization and pacing, and dialogue. And so I had to learn how to write a book. By the time I started this project, the second book, I had a bit of a leg up on that. But nonetheless, I still came to the desk and I was like, how do I do this? Because when you ask somebody to plunk down $20 for a book and spend 8 to 12 hours reading it, that's a big ask. And you want to write a story that's engaging, that is immersive, that the reader walks away with something. I like to read books where I learn something. And so I'm always trying to think, what could I teach the reader about? And so all of that I still had to grapple with. How do I create an engaging story and then still deal with the issues and the things that are important to me, that might be important to other people. So the second book didn't take quite as long, obviously, but nonetheless, I still, and with my third project, I'm still like, okay, I need to make sure that I'm writing a story that people want to spend their hard-earned dollars to read.
And then you were next, and then we'll continue.
Hi, Wanda. Congratulations. I'm so excited for you. You said earlier the research was very hard for you to read as you was doing the research. How did it make you feel?
Ooh, yeah, that was tough, particularly when I was researching the murders of Cheney, Goodman, and Schwerner. That was real tough. And as I was writing particular passages for this book, I had to step away from it. Like, too much of that was hard to process. I talk about things that make me sad, things that make me mad. That was one of them, because these were 3 young men. I mean, one of them had a young wife, 2 white, 1 black. And these men were killed for simply trying to help people get the right to vote, something that the Constitution guarantees all of us. And so when I got to passages in research where it was tough like that, I would gather whatever research I needed, and then I would go and do something that was lighter, like watch cartoons, something like that.
How much time do we have? Let's see.
It's got about 10 minutes.
Okay, great.
And we got some questions online as well.
Oh, let's do. I want to make sure let's do you first, because I told her next. But then we'll do an online question that you can just read, because I want to make sure you guys feel included. We're so glad that you are here and pushing the button and buying the book right now. Yes.
Congratulations, Wanda.
Thank you.
I've got just more of an observation, but you probably have a response to it. I'm about 60% of the way through Anywhere You Go. And it's not a spoiler to say that the chapters are written, each one is written in the voice of the different characters.
Right.
And in both books, I loved your character development. I think you write great characters. But I wondered if doing it that way, helped you develop these great characters.
Oh.
If that's intentional, maybe.
I guess when I write my characters, it's funny. I've heard some writers say that, they hear their characters talking to them, them the writer. I hear characters talking to each other in my head. I told you going in my head is a dangerous place. It's a venture. But I do, it's like I'll hear conversations between 2 or 3 people. And so I try and jot it down as fast as I can. They don't talk to me per se, but they talk to each other. And so usually when I start a project, I usually start with dialogue because I've heard a character or with Violet, for example, at the beginning of the book, she kind of describes how she has come to be standing outside at 2:30 in the morning, prepared to run away. I heard her, kind of having this conversation and thinking these things, and so I would just write it down. And it comes at the oddest times too. Sometimes I'll, just coming out of a deep sleep, or I'm outside walking around. But when I hear it, I usually try and capture it. And usually my characters are loosely based on people that I've known in my life, or people I've worked with, or people I know. I have not written about anybody in this audience.
As far as we know. Let's have an online question.
All right, Julie asks, have your kids read your books? And if so, what kind of feedback do they give you?
Oh, that's a great question, Julie. Thank you. So my 2 older ones have read the first book. My youngest is 13, and I was a little suspect of letting him read All Her Little Secrets just because of some of the things in there. But I promised him he could read it when he was 16. And I think anywhere you run, my oldest, my daughter, has read that. I'm not sure about my older son. And I feel perfectly fine letting my younger son read this book, even though it's adult fiction. I think that it is important history. It's American history in this book. And I would not have any problem with him reading this book.
Another one online?
Yeah.
We've got one more. Jill asks, do you ever plan to visit any local book clubs for folks who read your book?
Oh, yeah, I do book clubs virtually. So if you have a book club, you'd love to have me talk, just go to my website, WandaMorrisWrites.com. I know that sounds like a commercial, but just go to WandaMorrisWrites.com and send me a note and give me some details. But yeah, I do book clubs virtually.
I also want to say a really fun thing for book clubs to do is to partner with a local independent bookstore. Because if your book club has partnered with a local independent, the author knows that you are buying their books, and that makes them want to spend time with you. You are paying their electric bill, you are sending their children to college. So like one thing you could do, Charis has a lot of copies. You could call and say, we want Wanda for a book club, and I'm sure that they could work that out. You get the copies here, and maybe that makes Wanda feel a little more like visiting your book club. I know that works out for
Excellent
me.
idea. Excellent.
And then you have, I think, well, this will be the last one.
Sure, and I will leave mine.
Okay, I'll repeat it for the online people.
Love this book. I think I read it in just a couple days, so I could put it down. And I also read All Her Little Secrets. I was wondering, as far as rereading one, did you have different endings? Or was that where you were going the entire time? And then my second question is that I saw where there were some connections, so to speak. And in your third book, will we see some characters in the next book?
So for the people online, the first question was, did she have several endings or did she know the ending?
With All Her Little Secrets, I didn't have a clue. With this book, I didn't have a clue. All Her Little Secrets had a different ending. And then my agent, Lori Galvin, I love you, Lori Galvin, I know you're out there. She read the book and she said, oh, I love this book, but you need to change the ending. It's like, I you said you love the book. But she was right. With this book, I had no clue what the ending was going to be. I always know that my books are going to be a hot mess at the end, and somebody is going to die. So that much I knew, but I didn't know how it was all going to come together.
Somebody, one person, that seems unambitious for a Wanda Morrison.
Good point.
Yeah. And then the second question was, I believe, she saw some connections and threads running through it. Are those going to continue in book 3? I don't know. All right. We're going to do one more thing because I think this is so cute. I can hardly see it. There is a very glamorous friend of yours here.
Oh, my sister-in-law.
She is clearly a big Wanda Morris fan. Sandra, I want you to come show this shirt. She had a whole faction of people show up in these shirts. I just think it's the cutest thing. Look at this. Really into this. Turn around so the camera can see.
My sister-in-law, Sandra, the model for the day. My son, my husband, they all surprised me. My other sister-in-law, Linda, they're all wearing these shirts. I hope they got one for me. And before we go, I just want to give some huge shout outs. All my friends and family who are here tonight. I mean, y'all are packing this place, and thank you for that. I have to thank people like Rachel Housel Hall, Gilly McMillan, Lou Burney, Lisa Unger. I'm sure I'm forgetting some people. It's a big ask when you tell people, I've written this book, would you please read it and tell me what you think? And these people stepped up to the plate. I love them dearly. Thank you very much. My husband and my son, who are my tech crew, I love them. And you know how we women are about our crowns and our hair. My hairstylist is here. Thank you to Lori, Galvin, my agent, and the whole William Morrow team, especially my editor, Asante Simons. Thank you all for making my dreams come.
All right, we're gonna say goodbye to our folks online. Thank you so much to Wanda and Joshilyn for this wonderful conversation. Of course, thank you to everyone watching here at Charis and around the world. If you're watching from home and you don't yet have your copy of Anywhere You Run, please go ahead and click that teal button at the bottom of your screen to buy your copy today from Charis. It really does help us when you buy your books from us. If you already have your book, you can support the work of Charis Circle by making a donation of any amount via the link on your screen. Thank you for your support of tonight's event, and thank you so much for watching.
It's like 4,000 husband points for the night.
Thank you, everybody, for coming out. You don't have a clue how much this means